I was a king. That's what I told myself every morning when I looked in the mirror of my penthouse suite, adjusting my $1,000 tie, sipping coffee from a cup that cost more than most people made in a day. I built an empire from nothing. Every dollar in my account was proof of my brilliance. Every skyscraper that bore my name was a monument to my ambition. I didn't just play the game, I owned it. I crushed my competitors, bought loyalty, and turned business into war. And I won. Always. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss new stories. If you enjoyed this one, leave a like, it really helps. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss. I never wasted time on pity. The world belonged to those who took it, not those who begged. My employees? Tools. My partners? Temporary. Even my family, my wife and children, they were more assets than loved ones. I provided for them, gave them a life of luxury, and in return, I expected loyalty, not love. Love was an illusion, a word used by the weak to justify their failures. Power was the only thing that mattered, and money was the only power I respected. The morning of my death was like any other. I sat at the head of a long, polished table in a boardroom overlooking the city I ruled. My advisors, lawyers, and investors sat around me, eyes flicking between their documents and my expression, waiting for my approval. Today was the final step in securing $1 billion merger that would eliminate my last remaining competitor. They begged me to reconsider some clauses, warning me of long-term risks, legal complications. I didn't care. Risks were for people who doubted themselves. I had no doubts. I signed the papers with a smirk, sealing my victory, watching the nervous relief in their faces. They feared me. They envied me. That was how it should be. I leaned back, letting the satisfaction settle in, thinking about how I would celebrate tonight. A quiet dinner, a new watch. Maybe I'd just sit in my penthouse looking down at the city and remind myself that everything beneath me was mine. But then, something shifted. A sharp pain bloomed in my chest, sudden and violent, as if an invisible hand had reached inside and was squeezing my heart with crushing force. The room blurred, voices became distant. Someone called my name, but I couldn't respond. The pain spread, radiating through my arms, my neck. I gasped, but my lungs wouldn't fill. I tried to stand, but my legs buckled. The last thing I saw before I hit the ground was my signature, still drying on the contract. Darkness swallowed me. A suffocating, endless void. No sound, no light, no sensation except the unbearable weight of emptiness pressing down on me from all sides. Time didn't exist here. I didn't exist. My thoughts faded, my identity unraveled, my entire life, every deal, every dollar, every conquest meant nothing in this vast nothingness. Then, from the depths of the void, something stirred. A presence, a force that made everything I had ever known seem insignificant. It was not a voice, not a person, not even a vision. It was existence itself, and it was aware of me. And then it spoke. I was dead, that much was clear. There was no light at the end of a tunnel, no angels singing, no warmth, no peace. Just darkness, a void that stretched into eternity, pressing down on me like an ocean with no surface. I couldn't feel my body, I had no breath, no heartbeat, no weight, and yet I was still thinking, still aware. That terrified me more than death itself. I had always believed that when life ended, it ended completely. No afterlife, no second chances, no judgment, just nothing. But this wasn't nothing. This was something far worse. I tried to move, to scream, to break free from whatever this was, but there was nothing to break free from. I wasn't trapped. I was simply nowhere. My mind raced, grasping for logic, but there was no logic here. Time stretched and twisted. Was I here for seconds or centuries? Was this my eternity? A thought stabbed through me like a blade. If this was death, then I had lost everything. My empire, my power, my name, my legacy. All of it meant nothing here. Then, in the endless void, something changed. It was subtle at first. A presence, a shift in the fabric of whatever this place was. I wasn't alone anymore. Something vast, something beyond comprehension was here with me. It wasn't a person, it wasn't a voice, it wasn't anything I could define, but I felt it, watching, waiting, And then it spoke, not in words, not in sound, but directly into the core of whatever I had become. "You thought you owned the world." The moment I heard it, I shattered. The presence carried no malice, no anger, no judgment, only absolute, undeniable truth. It wasn't a question, it wasn't an accusation, it was a fact, laid bare with such terrifying clarity that I couldn't argue. I had spent my life believing I was in control, that power was mine to seize and wield as I pleased. But standing before this presence, I realized the truth. I had never owned anything. Not my wealth, not my power, not even my own soul. I wanted to speak, to explain, to demand answers, but I had no mouth, no voice. Yet the presence understood. It pulled me forward. Not physically, but as if my very essence was being drawn towards something immense. And suddenly the void cracked. Light burst through, blinding and infinite, swallowing everything around me. I was no longer in the darkness. I was somewhere else, a space beyond space, a realm that should not exist but did. In front of me stood a throne, not made of gold or stone, but of something greater, something alive, pulsing with light, shifting in form. It wasn't a thing, it was existence itself. And on that throne sat, no, not sat, but was. I had never believed in God, not truly. Religion was for the weak, a crutch for those who couldn't carve their own path. But now, faced with what stood before me, I knew with absolute certainty that I had been wrong. God was real, and I was standing in His presence. I had prepared arguments my whole life against the idea of God. I had dismissed faith as delusion, mocked those who spoke of divine power, built my empire on the idea that men create their own fate. But here, now, all of that collapsed. There was no debate. There was no denying Him. His presence was overwhelming, not in wrath or fury, but in sheer magnitude. He wasn't a man in robes, wasn't an old figure in the sky. He was everything, every moment, every thought, every truth, every atom of existence. Looking upon Him was like staring at eternity itself. And then, for the first time in my life, I felt small. I felt my entire being laid bare before Him. Every action, every decision, every selfish choice, every life I had stepped on to build my own. There were no lies here, no excuses, no rationalizations. My soul was exposed in its rawest form, and I could see it for what it truly was. Hollow, wasted, rotting. Everything I had ever done had been for myself. Every deal I had made, every dollar I had hoarded, every relationship I had destroyed, every chance for kindness I had ignored. My success had come at the cost of others. And now, none of it mattered. I wanted to fall to my knees, to weep, to beg, but I had no body to do so. I was nothing before Him, and yet He saw me, truly saw me. And then He spoke again. "Do you know what you are worth?" The words tore through me, not in anger, not in punishment, but in truth. And for the first time I felt something I had never allowed myself to feel: regret. Regret consumed me like a fire that could never be extinguished. It burned through every memory, every excuse, every lie I had ever told myself. I thought I had known power, that I had shaped my own destiny, but standing before Him, I understood I had been nothing more than a blind man grasping at illusions. Every deal, every empire I had built, every conquest I had claimed, all of it was weightless dust in the presence of true power. God did not move. He did not need to. His existence alone was enough to hold me in place, to strip me of every falsehood I had clung to in life. I wanted to plead, to ask for mercy, but I couldn't. Not because I wasn't allowed to speak, but because I knew I didn't deserve it. I had lived only for myself, never caring about the consequences, never considering that my actions left ripples in the lives of others. Then, without warning, the space around me shifted. It wasn't a movement in the way the physical world moves, it was something deeper, like the fabric of reality itself was bending. The brilliance of His presence faded, not because He disappeared, but because I was being pulled away. A force stronger than gravity seized me, dragging me downward. I tried to resist, but there was no body to fight with, no ground to hold on to. My very being was being carried into the depths of something far beyond my understanding. The light vanished. I was falling, not through air, not through space, but through something else entirely. Through existence itself. The sensation was unlike anything I had ever felt in life. It was weightless and yet crushing, silent and yet filled with an unbearable cacophony of whispers. Shapes moved in the darkness, shadows of things I couldn't comprehend, shifting and watching, as if waiting for something. I had no control. I was no longer the man who dictated the course of his own fate. I was nothing more than an observer now, being pulled deeper and deeper into the unknown. And then I stopped. The darkness around me took form. At first, it was impossible to comprehend. An endless expanse that stretched in every direction, with no sky, no ground, only a vast emptiness that felt heavy with unspoken truths. Then, slowly, the space around me began to take shape, and what I saw made my soul tremble. It was a city, but not like any city I had ever known. It was built of towering structures that reached into the abyss, shifting and breathing as if they were alive. The buildings were not made of stone or glass, but something unnatural, something that pulsed, as if the entire place was one great organism. The streets were empty, silent, stretching infinitely in every direction, and the air was thick, pressing down on me like a weight I couldn't escape. There was no sun, no source of light, yet everything was illuminated in an eerie, colorless glow. And then I noticed something that sent terror deep into whatever remained of my soul. The city was familiar, not in its appearance, but in its presence. I knew this place. I had built this place. Not in the physical world, but through my actions, through my choices. Every deal I had made, every person I had used, every soul I had stepped on to rise higher had contributed to the foundations of this place. It was a city forged from greed, from selfishness, from ambition without conscience. This was my kingdom, the true manifestation of everything I had ever valued in life. And now, I was trapped in it. I turned, searching for any sign of life, but there was nothing. No movement, no sound, just the overwhelming presence of what I had created. And yet, I knew I wasn't alone. Something was here, watching. Then I saw them. Figures, standing in the distance, half shrouded in the shifting darkness. Their faces were obscured, their bodies frozen, but I could feel them staring. The weight of their gaze was unbearable, filled with something more powerful than anger, more hollow than hatred. They knew me, and I knew them. These were the people I had wronged, the ones I had ruined, betrayed, discarded. Their presence was a whisper in the back of my mind, a constant reminder of debts left unpaid. They did not move, did not speak, but I could feel their sorrow, their suffering, and worst of all, I could feel my own indifference. Because in life, I had never cared. I wanted to scream, to plead, to justify myself. I wanted to tell them it had all been just business, that they should have been smarter, that if I hadn't done it, someone else would have. But the words wouldn't come, because in this place, there were no lies, only truth. And then, from the silence, a voice spoke. Not the voice of God, something else, something colder. Welcome home. The voice was not loud, but it didn't need to be. It wasn't a sound in the way I had known sound in life. It was deeper, heavier, as if it was woven into the very air, pressing into my thoughts, wrapping around me like an invisible force. It carried no anger, no cruelty, no warmth. It simply was. And in its presence, I felt smaller than I had ever felt before. Welcome home. The words echoed through me, not just in my ears, but in the core of my being. I turned, searching for the source, but there was no single figure, no entity I could fix my eyes on. The city around me shifted, the towering structures pulsing as if they were breathing, the distant figures standing motionless, watching. I wasn't alone, but I wasn't among the living. and whatever spoke to me was something far beyond my understanding. "This place is yours," the voice continued, as if responding to my thoughts before I could even shape them. "You built it. Every brick, every street, every shadow, woven from your choices, your desires, your will. You created this, and now you walk in its halls." I shook my head, the instinct to deny still lingering, but there was no point. The city pulsed around me, a grotesque reflection of the empire I had built in life. A kingdom of power, forged in greed, held together by the suffering of those beneath me. I had always told myself I was only playing the game, that the world rewarded the strong, that those who lost deserved to lose. But standing here, in the cold silence of what I had truly created, I saw the lie for what it was. "Why am I here?" My voice felt weak, foreign in my own thoughts. "Am I dead?" There was a pause, and then the voice answered. "You are where you have always been. Now you simply see it for what it is." Something shifted. The city darkened, the structures looming higher, twisting in unnatural ways. I felt movement beneath me, as if the ground itself was alive, shifting to reveal something hidden just beneath the surface. And then, before me, a shape emerged. It was not God. I knew that immediately. This was something else, something vast, something ancient, something that had always been watching from the edges of my life, unseen but present. It had no form, and every form at once, shifting between shadows and light, flickering between what my mind could recognize and what it could not comprehend. It was not a demon, nor an angel, nor anything that belonged to human myths. It was something far older, something that had existed before men ever spoke of gods, before men ever named the unknown. And it knew me. "You sought power," it said, its voice no longer external but inside me, threading through every thought I had ever had. "You believed in nothing but yourself. You made yourself the god of your own world. And so your world is here, waiting for you." A weight settled on me, crushing, suffocating, and yet there was no hand, no force I could see. Only the presence, only the terrible, undeniable truth in its words. It was right. I had worshipped nothing but myself, and now I stood in a world shaped by my own reflection. "You still think this is punishment?" the voice murmured. "It is not. It is simply the result of your own design." I tried to breathe, but there was no breath here, no body to inhale or exhale. Only the pressure, only the crushing understanding that I had never truly controlled anything, that my power had always been an illusion. And yet, in the horror of that realization, another thought surfaced, cold and desperate. Can I leave? Silence. The figures in the distance did not move, but I could feel them watching, waiting. The city around me pulsed, as if laughing, as if breathing with the presence that now surrounded me. And then, at last, the voice answered. "That depends." A shift. The darkness peeled away, revealing something beyond the streets, beyond the towers. A door, or something like a door, a passageway that did not belong in this place, a crack in the reality I had shaped for myself. Light spilled from it, not warm, not inviting, but something absolute, something more real than anything I had ever known. And beyond it I felt him, not the shifting entity that had spoken to me, not the thing that had welcomed me into the city of my own making. Something greater, something I had already glimpsed once before. The realization struck like lightning. He was there, just beyond the passage, waiting, watching, silent. He had not abandoned me, had not cast me into this place without purpose. He had allowed me to see the truth. But why? "You have a choice," the voice murmured, the shifting presence flickering around me. "Step forward and face what waits beyond. But be warned. Truth is not kind, and it does not bend for those who are unwilling to see it." The passage loomed before me, the light growing stronger, searing into my mind, burning away every falsehood I had ever believed. I did not know what lay beyond. I did not know what would happen if I stepped through. but I knew that if I stayed, I would never leave. I stepped forward. The moment my essence crossed the threshold of the passage, the city of my own making vanished, collapsing into itself like smoke pulled into a void. The figures watching me did not move, did not follow. They simply faded, swallowed by the world they belonged to, the world I had built. Then there was only the light. It was not warm, not soft, not the gentle glow of a comforting presence. It was searing, absolute, exposing. I had nowhere to hide. Every part of me was laid bare before it, every thought, every action, every excuse I had ever made. And then I saw. It was not a vision, it was not a memory. It was more than that. It was as if I was being forced to relive my life, not through my own eyes, but through the eyes of those I had affected. Every deal, every manipulation, every moment of cruelty I had justified as business, as strategy, as survival. It was all here, unfolding with perfect clarity, and I was forced to watch, not as the man who had lived it, but as the people I had hurt. I saw the young man I had fired without warning because he had hesitated in a meeting. I had barely thought of him after that day, but now I was inside his mind, feeling the terror, the shame, the weight of his world crumbling as he walked home, wondering how he would tell his wife and child that he had lost everything. I saw the woman whose company I had crushed, not because I needed to, but because I could. She had spent years building it, pouring every ounce of her soul into something she believed in, only for me to take it away with a stroke of my pen. I felt her despair, her desperation, the hollow emptiness that followed when she realized there was no coming back from what I had done to her. And then, worse, I saw my family. My wife, the woman I had married not out of love but out of convenience, believing she was just another asset, a fixture in the image I wanted to present to the world. I saw her loneliness, her quiet misery, the way she had long since stopped trying to reach me because she knew I would never let her in. My children, the ones I had provided for, given everything money could buy, except for what they truly needed. Me. I had been a stranger in my own home, an authority figure rather than a father, a presence they feared more than they loved. I had thought I was giving them the best life possible, but now I saw the truth. They had never cared about the wealth, the luxury. They had only ever wanted a father who saw them. And I never had. I wanted to scream, to look away, to shut out the unbearable weight of it all, but there was no escape. The light held me there, forcing me to see every moment, every choice, every consequence. And then it went deeper. I saw the moments I had never thought about, the seemingly insignificant decisions that had spiraled into suffering for others, a bribe I had paid that had led to the firing of innocent workers, a company I had acquired and dismantled, leaving families without income, a promise I had broken to someone who had once trusted me, sending them down a path of bitterness and ruin. My life had been a network of destruction, and I had never even noticed, because I had never cared. I had lived my life believing that power was the only thing that mattered, that money was the only measure of success. And now, standing here, stripped of everything, I saw the truth. I had built nothing. I had won nothing. My empire was dust, my name was meaningless, my victories were illusions. I had spent 50 years chasing something that had never truly existed. And then, the worst truth of all settled into my soul, undeniable and final. None of it had been necessary. I saw the life I could have lived, the one I had ignored, dismissed, destroyed. I saw the man I could have been, a man who used his power to build instead of destroy, a man who lifted others instead of stepping on them, a man who was present, who was loved, who understood that true wealth was not measured in dollars, but in the lives he touched. It had always been possible. Every step of the way, I had been given choices, and every time I had chosen wrong. I had condemned myself. The light did not speak. It did not need to. The truth was enough. It settled into me like a weight I would never be able to lift. And for the first time in my existence, I truly understood what it meant to be lost. The weight of my life's truth pressed down on me like an unbearable force, suffocating, inescapable. I had spent decades convincing myself that I was in control, that power was my birthright, that the world existed to be conquered. And now, stripped of every illusion, I understood I had built nothing of value. I had amassed wealth, but left only ruin in my wake. I had wielded influence, yet no one truly loved me. I had spent my entire existence believing I was a god among men, only to stand here, exposed, as nothing more than a man who had squandered every chance to be more. The light around me shifted, pulsing, expanding beyond comprehension. It was not just light. It was knowledge, time, truth. It was existence itself, moving, breathing, carrying me forward whether I wanted it or not. And then, as if I were being pulled through the very fabric of reality, I saw. At first, it was just a glimpse, a flicker of something beyond the void, beyond the reckoning I had endured. Then it expanded, unraveling before me like the pages of a book that had already been written but not yet read. The world, the future, the fate of everything. I saw cities swallowed by fire, the sky choked with smoke, oceans rising in fury. The earth cracked open, swallowing buildings, streets, entire civilizations. I saw men and women running, screaming, clawing at the air as if trying to escape something unseen. The world was falling apart, not in the distant future, not in some abstract prophecy, but soon, very soon. Then I saw them, the ones in power. The men who sat in high towers, signing documents that dictated the fate of millions. The ones who, like me, had built empires not with compassion, but with greed. They feasted while others starved, hoarded wealth while the world crumbled beneath them. And I knew they had seen this future too. They had known for years, but they did nothing, because they thought they were untouchable. And then, beyond the destruction, I saw something else. A figure, standing alone in the wreckage. He was not consumed by the flames, not swallowed by the chaos. He stood unmoved, his presence more solid than anything around him. And though his face was unfamiliar, I knew him. Not from life, not from memory, but from something deeper. It was him. God did not speak, but I felt his words as clearly as if they were carved into the core of my being. This is what they have chosen. The images shifted. I saw the turning points, the moments when everything could have been different, the chances humanity had been given to change course, to choose mercy over power, unity over division, love over greed. And every time, the choice had been the same. Every time, the path had led here. Is this final? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Is there no way back? Silence. But in that silence, a terrible understanding settled into me. The future was not set in stone. It was not unchangeable, but the weight of history, of choices already made the outcome all but inevitable. The point of no return was not in the future. It was here. It was now. And then, for the first time, I was given a choice. I felt it before I saw it. The same passage that had brought me here, now stretching before me once more. But this time, it led not to judgment, but back. Back to the world I had left behind. I could feel it calling to me, pulling at whatever remained of my soul. You may return, the voice said, but understand this. Returning does not erase what you have seen. It does not absolve you. It does not promise salvation. I turned back toward the light, toward the presence that had shown me everything. Then why? Because you asked, it answered. Because choice was always yours to make. I hesitated, feeling the weight of what this meant. To return meant to live again, but to live knowing the truth. To carry the burden of all I had seen, to bear witness to the destruction that was coming, to try, perhaps in vain, to change what was already set in motion. But to stay meant something worse. To remain in this space between, knowing I had been given a chance and refused it. I took a step forward, The moment I did, the world around me shattered, and I fell. I fell through nothingness, weightless, directionless, my mind consumed by everything I had seen, the destruction, the choices, the truth. It was no dream, no vision. It was reality, waiting to unfold. I had been given a choice, and I had taken it, though I wasn't sure if it had been the right one. I only knew that I could not stay, that something in me, something desperate, something human, had begged for another chance. Then, with a violent jolt, I felt everything snap back into place. The weight of a body, the rush of air into lungs that had been still for too long. A searing pain in my chest, as if I had been wrenched from the jaws of death itself. Sounds flooded back. Voices, frantic, urgent, machines beeping in alarm. My eyelids felt impossibly heavy, but I forced them open and the world blurred into focus. I was in a hospital. Tubes ran into my arms. Wires snaked across my chest, and above me a doctor's face hovered, eyes widening in disbelief. Someone shouted. A nurse gasped. And then I heard a voice I hadn't expected. My wife's. "Oh, God," she whispered. "He's awake." I turned my head, sluggish, aching, and saw her standing there, eyes red, hands clasped together as if she had been praying. My children were behind her, hesitant, uncertain, as if they weren't sure whether to believe what they were seeing, and I realized, of course they weren't, because I had been dead. For how long, I didn't know, but the look on their faces told me enough. The doctors asked me questions, checking my vitals, calling it a miracle, an impossible recovery, but I barely heard them. My mind was still filled with what I had seen, with the presence that had spoken to me, with the weight of what I now knew. I had come back, but I was not the same man who had left. The days blurred together. Reporters wanted interviews, business partners reached out, eager to spin my survival into a spectacle, but I had no interest in any of it. The empire I had built, the power I had worshipped, the wealth I had hoarded, it all felt meaningless now. A distraction. A lie. I tried to explain it once, to my wife, to my children. I told them I had seen something beyond death, something greater than all of us, that I had stood before him, that I had been shown the truth. But they didn't understand. How could they? They hadn't seen what I had seen. They hadn't felt the weight of it, the terror, the finality. And so I stopped trying to explain. Instead, I made a decision. One morning, before the world had woken, I left. I walked away from everything. My company, my fortune, my past. I withdrew every cent I could, gave it away to those who needed it more. I left behind the world I had once ruled and set out in search of something I could not name. Not redemption, not forgiveness. Something else. Something I had never truly known. I don't expect you to believe me. I wouldn't have believed it either once, but I have seen what waits beyond this life. And when your time comes, when you stand before him, when all the lies are stripped away and only the truth remains, you will understand. The only question is, will it be too late?